Hi you guys, it's Lynnea, and welcome to the October feature for LDRS Creative. This month we are featuring all things fall and Halloween, and LDRS Creative just had a huge release, and in it was a bunch of fall themed products. So I'm going to be using some of those along with some older products to create a fun one-dimensional background with a lot of shimmer and shine. So Jennifer McGuire recently did a video where she took a stencil and a piece of double-sided tape and added glitter, 2 colors of glitter to a stencil. And I thought to myself as I was watching, I was like, well, why can't I do that with embossing powder? So I took a piece of A2 sized cardstock, covered it completely with double-sided sticky adhesive, removed the backing, and placed it onto the leaves stencil from LDRS Creative. And from the back, I'm just going to press that really well to make sure that there's no gaps in the stencil, in between the stencil and the adhesive. And then I'm just going to pour on a metallic-y, kind of like a pine green colored of embossing powder. And it is going to stick right onto the leaves. And when I peel away the stencil, you want to be careful peeling it off so you don't rip your stencil or your paper. But you can see here that the embossing powder is only stuck to, the part that you would normally ink, the positive part of the stencil. But there is still a bunch of adhesive showing. So I'm going to take my heat gun and very carefully heat this up. Now, in the end, I found that it embossed pretty much just like you would if you were embossing powder onto paper. However, it was kind of like embossing on acetate in a way that you don't want to heat the same place for too long. Otherwise, the adhesive behind those leaves will bubble. So once I was done with the embossing the green powder, I placed the stencil back over top and ran my anti-static powder tool over that just so that when I added my second color of embossing powder, it doesn't stick to the green leaves where I've already heated the embossing powder. Now I'm adding a cream colored pearl embossing powder, and I did a couple of experiments with this, and I did find that it's best if I do the darkest color first for the positive part of the stencil and then the lighter color second. That way, if any little bits kind of get here and there, I could see them easily and kind of wipe them away. And especially for this one, I'm using this pearl embossing powder. So any little bits that end up on top of the green leaves that are already embossed, it doesn't really show because this is kind of a clear pearl embossing powder with just a little bit of that like off-white color. So I'm going to go ahead and emboss this whole panel. And you can see here, this is completely smooth because all that embossing powder almost sort of melts together, but it looks like it has dimension and it has so much shine from the embossing powders. Now I had some cracks in my cardstock, and I think that came from when I was removing my stencil the first time after I added the green embossing powder. I kind of just tore my stencil right away from my paper, and my paper folded a little bit. And then in addition to that, while I was heating, I held my heat gun in place for just a second too long. So just a couple tips, if you recreate this with your own stencils, you want to be careful when you're removing the stencil off of the double-sided adhesive, and also keep your heat gun. Pretend that you're embossing on vellum or acetate. You know how you would keep your heat gun, and maybe even add your heat on and then remove the heat and then bring it back and then remove the heat, something like that. But I found a way to cover up those cracks in my embossing powder background, so I will show you that in just a minute. For now, I stamped out the little owl and fox image from the Woodland Wonderful stamp set. This is new from the LDRS Creative release that was just released recently. And this stamp set is full of woodland critters. So cute. And I just loved the little owl and the fox together. So I'm going to color them quickly with my alcohol markers. I didn't keep the whole coloring in because it's basic 2-color blending. Like what you've seen me do before. So I'm just going to finish that up, and then I will cut out this little image. To cover up those cracks in my background, I took a piece of the sweater weather paper, and I'm going to cut that down with a practically square die. And it's just this little scalloped frame. I added some fun foam for dimension onto the back of it, and then I'm just going to use my liquid glue to glue this over where those cracks are. And my idea is to have this square overhanging, and then I can trim off that left side. You can see there that I did use some white embossing powder to emboss a sentiment from the Happy Fall stamp set, which is an older stamp set, but I wanted to have a cute little fall sentiment to go along with these cute little critters. I'm just going to hold that in place there. I'll use my T-square ruler to make sure that is straight. And then once it's dry, I can take my scissors and just chop off that left side of the square. I'll use some foam squares to add my little critters on top. And that is it. This is such a cool technique. I hope that you try it with your stencils and your embossing powders, because really it looks so fun, and I can't even describe how fun it is in a video. Thank you guys so much for joining me. See you soon. Bye.